Once again, Dr. Ruiz.
Welcome back. As we were talking about, Santeria is sometimes known as an esoteric, which means understand only by a few. But why is this? Why does this secretive religion keep it from the outside world? There's a reason to this matter. Santeria members have this concept of ache, which is only reached through the ethical guidance and spiritual awakening of Santeria. Santeria, having its roots in Africa, got strong and took much hold in Cuba. Maile, or religious home, are a big part of Cuba, especially in the town of Valemira, Cuba. In Valemira, Cuba, it's a small town, otherwise known as El Campo, where everyone knows everyone. Children grow up with these Santeria religions engraved to them. Everyone knows about the Maile and about the Babalu, also known as the Kid Santero. You could go in a consulta anytime, you just walk in. Overall, this community is a very family and community-based organization. Santeria. Naturally, there are certain ceremonies that are not known to outsiders, but this uncertainty doesn't necessarily mean that Santeria is scary or a bad thing. Mailes are actually used as a community center where one could go to get information about the town, the community, not just spiritual guidance. As I mentioned before, the kids grow up in this environment and embrace their Santeria culture. Overall, Santeria isn't necessarily a bad thing, but may seem a little frightening to outsiders by a glimpse of it, for the uncertainty brings a lot of fear. But in reality, just like many communities and many religions, it's based on family and veneration to their gods. The Pope's message of peace and unity is actually welcomed by a lot of Santeros. We got some commentary on Elijah Roshinga, who says that the Pope's visit is important for Santeros to recognize, as it transmits a message of peace that is seen not only in the Catholic religion, but also within Santeria. As I mentioned before, Santeria is a very close-knit community. In places in the United States like Miami, New York, New Jersey, where there's a strong influence of African and Hispanic culture, these communities have formed together this close-knit culture to represent Cuba and it tastes a little bit like home. I can imagine if you live in Hialeah, it's easy to find a Santero by just hearing the tambores or seeing a man dressed in white and wearing the beads. But what happens if you live in Sweden or Iowa or Utah? Finding a Santero might not be as easy. That's why these internet sites where you could reach out and get a consulta from a Santero are becoming more widely accepted within the religion.
Thank you for explaining to us about Santeria in today's world.
Of course.
A common misconception about Santeria is that it's a polytheistic religion. It's actually a monotheistic religion with the belief in one supreme God, with three entities in that God, in which we can find parallels to the Trinity of Christianity. Although the Mare is the supreme being, the Father, the creator of the universe. The name translated from Yoruba means almighty. Oloron translated means lords. In this state, God is visible as the sun, which is warm and life-giving. Through the energy of the sun, Oloron created the universe, and the owner of heaven, Oron, breathed life into it. Olofi translated means loom. Of the three, Oloron communicates God's commandments most directly by having the most direct communication with the Orishas. Orishas act as the link between God and people. They watch over people and report actions to Olofi. From Olofi, they are given ache, which is spiritual energy. Orishas usually begin in human form. They go through life and die, and then reach divine status. The name comes from Ori, which means head, symbolizing spiritual intuition and destiny. In a Santero ceremony, an Orisha owns the head of a Santero or Santera, which is a priest or priestess. Once an Orisha owns their head, that Santero or Santera is called their son or daughter. and they have especially close relation to that Orisha. Orishas receive devotion and worship, but they are not God, so they are never placed above God.
Dancing and music is a huge part of Santeria. It is a way to physically convey the beliefs and to connect with the Orishas. If an Orisha possesses a person, they will dance excitedly and dramatically and proclaim the messages they receive from the Orisha. The dances can be symbolic. Women twirl their skirt when they dance, making it fly with the wind, waving away bad spirits and energies.
Slaves from Africa brought to Cuba were not allowed to practice their religion and were forced to convert to Catholicism. But instead of abandoning their religion, the slaves found ways to incorporate the Catholicism surrounding them into their own religions, creating a blend. An example of this syncretism is how they accepted Mary into their religion. They saw the Virgin Mary as similar enough to Obatala to allow worship. Obatala is the second son of Oloron. Obatala is the Sky Father who created humans, which Oloron breathed life into. Obatala is the father of all Orishas. Until individuals are initiated into priesthood through the Santero ceremony, Obatala owns their head. The way slaves originally worshipped Mary as Obatala is the origin of why many Santeria altars have a statue or other representations of Mary, along with another altar with symbols of Orishas.
White ash and white markings are commonly used in religious practices. White is the most sacred color because it represents Obatala, and the color provides Obatala's protective energy.
Practices seek harmony and equilibrium through inner balance and communication with the natural world. When they lack balance, they suffer from asorbo, negative energy which becomes manifested as obstacles, bad health, relationship problems, failure, or economic problems. To get their life back into balance, people contact priests who can go through oracular processes of divination to communicate with Orishas. Divination is a way to implore the aid of Orishas. Santeria practitioners emphasize that it's not fortune-telling, but a sacred ceremony with prayers and petitions asking for help and intervention with diagnosing the physical, emotional, and mental state of the person seeking help.
There are things in the natural world held sacred in Santeria. All Santeros are meant to be botanical experts, and their lessons involve learning how to identify plants. The ceiba tree and the royal palm tree are held sacred and treated with respect to not offend them. They must be asked permission to cross their shadow.
Ache is a mystical energy, always existing and permeating through everything. As a metaphysical concept, it's hard to grasp a definition of it. It comes from Olodumare and is manifested through Oloron. Oloron is visible as the sun, which reminds us that without the sun, there is no life. Likewise, without Ache, there is no life. To those who practice Santeria, Ache is the most sacred possession because it represents their link to God's eternal presence. Ache is the life force of all humans and exists in everything. It is seen as the fruits of the Spirit, and it's an inherited experience of everyone who came before. It's a bodily experience, making it central to the physical beings on Earth, just like blood and oxygen. Its origin comes from the Trinity. Semi-divine Orishas helped Oloron spread Ache in the world to some of the first creations, which gave them human qualities and divine powers. Before the universe, Oloron was pure energy. There was an explosion of energy, and the universe became charged with Ache. Ache reaches humans through Orishas, who accompany them through life. The guidance of Orishas is asked for through prayer, divination, ceremonies, rituals, good behavior, and good choices. The goal is to acquire more Ache. Someone who has a great amount of Ache is described as having tremendo Ache, and they're admired and respected, especially if they carry all that Ache with humility and grace.
Santeria followers perform rituals and hold ceremonies to stay in touch with the Orishas. The Orishas are reached out through dancing, eating, singing, drumming, and other celebratory ways. Sometimes the Orishas are welcome to join the acts. Rituals take place in the iles, where the altars are, or in other areas where altars have been set up. Food is offered to the Orishas as part of worship. Cooked offerings are food that people usually have in their diet. Each Orisha has their favorite fruit, which is also offered. Blood sacrifice offerings come from animal sacrifices. The blood is food for the Orishas, and the meat is food for the people. Chickens, roosters, goats, sheep, and other kinds of birds are used in these sacrifices. This is a necessary part of a ritual because without blood, the Orishas are not present. Though this is one of the most controversial aspects of Santeria, many practitioners claim that the animals are treated well before the sacrifice, and that the killings are done humane ways, cutting the animal so that it passes out before it dies, similar to Jewish kosher and Muslim halal slaughtering techniques. Usually the meat from the animal is cooked and shared with the community, in communion with the Orishas who eat the blood.
Not all people who practice Santeria have been initiated. In Cuba, most people are familiar with the aspects and ideas of the religion and will go to santeros or santeras for help with problems. People with no formal ties to the religion are called aleyos, meaning outsiders or strangers. Aborisha is the intermediate stage, in which a more formal commitment is made through a connection with a religious elder and ile, and some ceremonies, but it's not a full initiation. An ile is a casa de santos, or a house of saints. It's a house temple built by priests or priestesses in their homes for orishas, to create space for worship. In an ile, an igboru would be found, which is an altar with 3 distinct thrones in blue, white, and red as seats for queens, kings, and deified warriors. An ororisha is a fully initiated priest or priestess, which are then called a santero or santera. To become a santero, orishas must signal through oracular divination that that person is called to the religion. There's a small percentage of people who are called to become fully initiated, because it calls for a full-time commitment. It's time-consuming and requires dedication and a special calling. In the week-long initiation, the person symbolically dies and is reborn, symbolizing the end of their old life and their new life beginning. The first year after their initiation, they are called Iolo, meaning bride of the Orisha.